Sauron's plan begins in Forodwaith immediately after the defeat of Morgoth at the dawn of the Second Age. He wants to bring peace, freedom, justice and security to Middle-earth by creating a new power of the flesh. He announces his intentions to the crowd, but unfortunately they don't like him very much and he gets stabbed over and over again until he explodes. The mastermind who couldn't read a room. Tragic. Why do you bow down to a hate mob after shitting on them? What chance do you have against the mighty elves if you can't bend a bunch of brain-dead orcs to your will? But it's okay guys, it's brilliant character development. You see, it was Sauron's arrogance that led him to his doom, but after spending 1,000 years as a pile of mud, the light of wisdom shone upon him, bright but subtle, like the moon softly illuminating a silver clam resting on a riverbed under a summer night sky, and gave him life once more as Sauron the Wise. Because as a good writer, I know that characters must have growth, otherwise it's not a story. Yes, these characters are older than the sun, but I'm not, what do you expect? Sauron explodes all over the place and takes a nap for a millennium.
Evil does not sleep, Elrond.
No, evil slept. He just woke up, ate, and went for a walk. He didn't plan anything. He has no knowledge of the geopolitical context. He doesn't know if Adar is alive, what the orcs are up to. He doesn't even know that Numenor exists. A tourist in Arda. On his way to Mordor, he stumbles upon a random old man with a pendant. Sauron explains that he wanted to see Adar to get killed again. Great plan. The random old guy tells him, "No, you have to leave," and Sauron says, "Okay." Sauron takes an interest in the old man's pendant and he tells him that it is the symbol of the kings of Eld and that the bloodline was broken a long time ago. So everyone knows that the Southlands have no king except for the important people. It's also a good thing that Sauron didn't fool himself into thinking that the old guy was a king, because that could have gone very badly for him. It's amazing how Sauron the tourist got all the information he needed to manipulate Galadriel in one exchange. The old man tells him to forget his dark past and focus on the future. Funny, it reminds me of a certain scene.
And whatever it was you did, be free of it.
Sauron should have married the old dude and made him queen.
Because you knew that our past meant nothing. Weighed against our future.
Sauron completely ignores the old guy's advice and steals the pendant, finally confirming once and for all that he was always evil and never confused. The only people who are confused are the writers. We meet the elves and learn that their light is fading and that the tree has cancer. This disease began to spread before Sauron finished his nap, so he has nothing to do with it. He didn't start the cancer, he didn't tell the elves to build a forge and find mithril. The whole elf and dwarf story was started by bullshit magical reason number 245, which is remarkably bad. Sauron will just walk into a town with a forge and mithril, hands in pockets. A tourist who happens to stumble upon everything he needs to make the rings. A true master of the mind. Meanwhile, war is brewing in the Southlands. After 1,000 years, the elves decide to leave the Southlands on the very day that Adar sets his plan in motion, which also happens to be the same week that Sauron awakens. That's crazy. All of this is happening at the same time after 1,000 years. What are the odds? If Adar had waited another day, he would have had no opposition. If he had done it one day earlier, he would have faced strong opposition. But no, it happened on that particular day, so he won't face enough opposition to win, but also enough opposition to delay his victory, allowing the Numenorians to arrive at the perfect moment to tragically burn to death, which will eventually lead to a coup in Numenor. None of this is Sauron's plan. He didn't plan the fall of Numenor. He didn't plan Mordor. It just sort of happened. How are the orcs okay with living in crappy conditions for 1,000 years? The writers jam all the events and the timeline together to work in Sauron's favor. This is not divine intervention, this is lazy garbage writing. The elf gets captured instead of warning everyone because, and I'm paraphrasing here, he doesn't know what's in the hole and that is the reason why he has to go in the hole. I clapped when I heard that. Back in the village, a single random orc spawns, causing the villagers to evacuate. This is incredibly important because this convenient random event delays Ada's plan by a day, completely changing the fate of the battle. So the elves are leaving the Southlands because Gil-galad has decided to end the hunt for Sauron once and for all the day he returns. Funny show written by funny people. For her service to the crown, Galadriel is sent to Valinor, but jumps off the ship at the last moment because of the stupidest metaphor known to elves and starts swimming away. At the exact same time, Sauron's ship is attacked by a sea monster, which is now confirmed not to be under his influence. The ship sinks and he builds a raft with the survivors. Time passes and Galadriel miraculously finds the raft. Smallest sea I've ever seen. The sea beast, terrified of Sauron, decides to attack again and somehow doesn't kill Galadriel. Sauron rescues her and he puts on the pendant in front of her. How does he know she'd be interested in it? How does he know that she isn't aware that the line is broken? How does he know she wants orcs? How is it that the tourist who knows nothing ends up with all the useful information to get Galadriel's attention? Everything he tells her fits perfectly. It's wonderful how Sauron is so omnipotent that he even has access to the script. Between the fog and the storm, they have no idea where they're going and drift until a third ship appears out of nowhere and picks them up. Smallest sea I've ever seen. So Galadriel and Sauron met from two completely different wrecks, one after swimming and one after building a raft in the middle of the Great Sea, after she's been looking for him for 1,000 years and he's been sleeping for 1,000 years, to be rescued by a third ship that happens to be commanded by the only elf friend in Numenor. While all this is happening, the dwarves discover a new ore, mythril. Why is all this happening on the same day? Can we stop it? Has the whole universe been waiting for the show to start? Back at the pond, Elendil says he's obliged to take them to Numenor, which is completely false. Since the reign of the queen's great-grandfather, no elf has been allowed to enter. Elendil explains that he committed treason because the sea put Galadriel in his path, and the sea is always right, though it's unwise to live one's life guessing at signs and portents. Galadriel throws a tantrum in front of the queen, forcing Sauron to intervene and ask the queen to wait a few days before making her decision. The queen agrees to let them stay for 3 days, even though they are rude and Numenor doesn't want an elf in the city because elves will steal their jobs. Now that they are both conveniently stuck in the city, random things can happen. Exciting! Sauron is a big fan of the city and doesn't want to leave or have anything to do with Galadriel. He has no plan to become king, raise an army, or seduce Galadriel in any way. He knows she's crazy, he just wants to chill out far away from her. A good idea, since Galadriel is currently pulling a knife on Elendil for no reason.
Suppose the words never manage to escape your throat.
Elendil takes a liking to her because she looks like his children and decides to betray the queen for the second time by taking Galadriel to the archives. While Galadriel is having the time of her life, Sauron wants a fresh start and tries to join a guild. The guild rejects him because he doesn't have the proper qualifications. To get those qualifications, Sauron comes up with a cunning plan. He gains everyone's trust by offering them a round of drinks, paid for by the taxpayers of course, and then steals a guild crest in front of everyone. They notice immediately, and after choosing to beat up 4 men, he ends up in jail, ruining his chance for a fresh start. What a master manipulator! None of this is planned, he's impulsive and immature. As everyone knows, to manipulate people, you need to be impatient, childish, and have an uncontrollable ego. In the archives, Galadriel finds the exact information she has been seeking for 1,000 years. The mark is a map of the Southlands. Why was there a map on the body of a soldier? Doesn't matter. What matters is that Sauron may have told her about the orcs, but she figured out the meaning of the mark herself. This reinforces the fact that Sauron has no plans to get there or send anyone there at this time. Galadriel also finds information about the kings of the Southlands, but the archives are incomplete and make no mention of the line being broken. How fortunate! And so, Galadriel decides that Sauron is king. He keeps telling her no, but she doesn't care. What I'm about to say is very controversial and highly debatable, so don't hate me, but this is probably the stupidest plot point in the entire series. She saw a guy with a pendant and decided he was king. It's just a stupid pendant. It's not a cool sword or a fancy ring, no, it's a stupid pendant that you can 3D print for $3 on Etsy. Poor Sauron can't manipulate people because they are stupid enough to do it themselves. No one around her questions it, and no one knows that the line has been broken, which is insanely important information that wouldn't be lost to time if there were immortal beings around. Galadriel doesn't even need Sauron to raise an army of Numenorians. She has enough information to go back to Lindon and be taken seriously. This is so silly. Galadriel gets locked up because she has a tempest inside of her, and Sauron tells her to stop acting like a child in front of the queen and find something to use as leverage instead. They grow up so fast, I'm proud of him. Galadriel escapes by pushing 4 soldiers. Of course we're supposed to believe that it's all thanks to Sauron's words, when in fact the whole conversation was extremely basic and any stupid person over the age of 200 should already know that. Pharazôn is here for some reason and chooses to negotiate with Sauron instead of going after her. After being arrested for sedition, Galadriel goes further and breaks into the tower to see the king she was told not to see. The queen is here because Pharazôn has agreed to the deal with Sauron, allowing them to speak again. Sauron doesn't care about that, he just traded Galadriel's whereabouts for his freedom and a guild crest. Galadriel declares a truce even though she just broke in and the queen has never done anything wrong. The queen suddenly trusts Galadriel and shows her the Palantir, giving Galadriel the leverage Sauron was talking about. Funny how Sauron says one thing and then everything falls into place perfectly to show how right he is and pretend he's in total control. The queen refuses to send an army to the Southlands until the petals of the tree fall. This is an acceptable use of divine intervention. It's a little push to get the characters to make a decision that's up to their own judgment. It's not like, oh my god, the water's going to explode, don't do it, bro. So the queen decides to go to war in 10 days without talking to the elves first, after being asked to do so by a warmongering elf accompanied by a tourist who is apparently a king. They can't confirm Sauron's report, they don't know the exact location and the size of the enemy's forces or if the orcs even exist. It's just an amazing idea. I will now cover the entire arc of the elves to get it out of the way. All of this is very important because it explains why the elves don't have enough mythril and why they need Sauron to come up with the idea of the alloy. So try to keep up. Gil-galad sends Elrond to the dwarves in the hope that he will somehow discover on his own that the dwarves are mining mithril even though he doesn't know it exists, and that he will magically believe it can save his race when he has no way of testing it and doesn't even know the tree has cancer, so he has to wait until he gets home to be asked the question instead of rushing back to bring them the news he could now hide if he knew how, because in the meantime he made a promise he made when he accidentally discovered the mithril after questioning Durin on Celebrimbor's orders, a discovery made after spying on Durin and Disa talking in the middle of a bridge in front of the whole world, a spying done because he questioned Disa and she raised doubts in him, whom he questioned because Durin was nowhere to be found, which allowed him to hear the password for the stone that the children happened to be singing so he could enter the Chamber of Secrets. He then confronts Durin and they have a fight. Elrond tells him that he has no bad intentions and that he's only here to see his friend, which is a double lie. He's here to recruit workers to build a forge and, granted, unbeknownst to him, to get mithril. Both these lies and the broken promise completely destroy any trust and goodwill he might have built up, but Durin is a victim and lets Elrond bully him, so even though he whines and complains like a child, he still does everything the elves want and then gives Elrond a piece of mithril as a token of their friendship. Then Daddy is angry and they all give up, so they make another deal, this time without lying, and when asked if they can be trusted, Elrond says he is trustworthy even though he has lied before. When asked if he can keep his promises, he says that he never made a promise that he didn't keep, except when he didn't keep his promise to Durin. The father says no, and Durin, crying again, somehow throws the mithril on the conveniently placed cancer leaf, and the leaf is cured, prompting Durin to mine more, proving once more that Elrond was not here for friendship. But Daddy is angry again, so he stops mining again and cries again. Elrond is back where he started, with only a small fragment of mithril, and that's it. The whole arc is nonsensical and somehow works in Sauron's favor. The elves now have mithril, but not enough to do anything of value without Sauron's help. Just tell Elrond what he has to do instead of this stupidity that makes everything less believable. Sauron informs the council that Adar is on his way to the tower. He assumes that Adar is trying to break the dam, even though he doesn't really know where the orcs are. Galadriel claims that he's using her and manipulating her so that the brain-dead viewers will think it's brilliant on rewatch, when in fact he just wants to be left alone and she's annoying. Galadriel tells him to fight again, but he refuses and throws the pendant away. He never wanted to be king unless he had no choice. The pendant was just an interesting item that might come in handy, and it did. Thanks to Galadriel's obsession with it, he became a citizen of Numenor. Now he has no use for it. His future does not include Galadriel. Unfortunately, later that night, Galadriel tells Sauron that he should fight and that he will not find peace in Numenor. She returns the pendant to him. All signs indicate that Sauron does not want to pretend to be king. He just wants to relax in Numenor, but he listens to Galadriel and decides to become king. It was Galadriel who convinced him to take the crown. He had no plan. The queen lost her father's blessing, 2 out of 5 ships exploded, the realm is divided, and Pharazôn wants to wait, but somehow they still go to the Southlands. It would have been great to hear what Sauron said to get more insight into his character and what made him choose this new path, but no, ellipses. Back in the Southlands, the battle is about to begin. The elf has discovered that the sword is a key to giving the orcs a home, and instead of sending someone away with it, they decide to stay and fight. What a bunch of stupid people. Throw it in the lake, bury it in some random place. The orcs have no way of finding it. You could argue that it's not a problem because Adar doesn't really need a key to open a dam, but the show pretends that he does. The elf decides to destroy the tower instead of the dam, which would have been much more effective, but not everyone is a tactical genius like me. After the battle is over, they conveniently take too long to notice that the sword is missing, giving Waldreg plenty of time to use the key. The volcano erupts, and fortunately, according to the showrunners, the cloud of ash doesn't kill Galadriel or anyone important. Sauron has, by sheer luck, contributed to the creation of Mordor and a civil war in Numenor. Sauron then disappears and is found later with a fatal wound, forcing Galadriel to take him to the elves. Assuming he did this on purpose, what is the goal? He knows nothing about the situation of the elves and what power is being created in Eregion. Oh well, doesn't matter. Sauron has been harassed by Galadriel all along, and he just happens to come to the place where he needs to be, where all the elements he needs to create a power over flesh are waiting for him. What an amazing journey! So yeah, I was just walking and then they put me on a boat that sank, and then I met an elf swimming in the middle of nowhere, and then we found a boat, and then she shot on the queen and she made me king, and I ended up in a volcano eruption. Crazy stuff, dude. And here I am in this random town with mithril and a forge after taking a 1000-year nap. Life is easy. In Eregion, Elrond gives the mithril to Celebrimbor, who says,
Only there was some way of doing more with less.
Which is pretty much the definition of an alloy, and yet he doesn't think of it. That means this elf genius doesn't know what an alloy is, and that's why Sauron will be useful. It's so easy to make Sauron look smart when everyone around him is an idiot. So after Sauron teaches him about alloy, Celebrimbor suggests they make a crown. Sauron almost became the Lord of the Crowns. That's how good his plan is. Gil-galad wants to stop the project, but Elrond convinces him to keep the forge running for 3 weeks. And here is the moment we've all been waiting for. The big reveal. Halbrand was Sauron all along. That's crazy. Of course it's all moronic, but that's not the point. The point is that he's been passive all along, and the moment he actually does something to manipulate Galadriel, he completely fails because his arguments are very bad. Let's get married and rule the galaxy together. That's nice. It would have been better to just cut that whole silly sequence because everyone knows that he doesn't have the means to manipulate her at this point. Once again, he looks like an idiot who has no control over anything. This is Forodwaith Gate all over again. Elrond rescues Galadriel and she tells them that Halbrand is gone and that they should never deal with him again. However, she does not reveal Halbrand's identity to anyone. Galadriel says that the rings must be untouched by Sauron, but they were. In Season 2, she keeps telling everyone that Sauron had nothing to do with making the rings, but that's a lie. Sauron could have easily tampered with the mythril and the dagger too, because at that point he knows they're going to use it to forge the rings. So the whole premise of Season 2 is that Galadriel doesn't tell anyone who Halbrand is and gives us the go-ahead for the creation of rings that have been touched by Sauron. What a stupid character and what a boring story. Sauron faces zero resistance, the writing is just so sad. Elrond learns that Halbrand is not who he says he is, and instead of asking Galadriel, he steals the rings and takes them to Lindon. Why are you doing this? This is a complete overreaction. And the best part is that Celebrimbor is just chilling in Eregion while all this is going on. Why not go with them? The capital and Eregion are one chase scene away. This is not just your most important creation, but a creation that will determine the fate of your entire race. Elrond and Galadriel acted completely suspicious. Are you not a little curious? The whole plot of Anatar is based on stupidity. Sauron travels to Mordor as King of the Southlands, is captured, and gains an audience with Adar. He bargains for his freedom and the freedom of his people in exchange for finding Sauron in Eregion. Adar accepts, which of course makes no sense. How is a stupid man supposed to find Sauron? And let's say he does, and Sauron doesn't kill him. Then what? What is Adar supposed to do? Sneak in? It seems very unlikely that his army could destroy Eregion. Why is Adar listening to some random guy anyway? Sauron's attempt to trick Adar into attacking before he even infiltrates Eregion could be interesting. It could show planning and actual cleverness. Unfortunately, the execution leaves a lot to be desired. Sauron doesn't even know that he can safely enter Eregion as Halbrand. He cannot even predict the time he will need because he has too much work to do. So how are we supposed to believe that he's in control of anything? Galadriel admits that Halbrand is Sauron. The elves know the situation is critical and they must warn Celebrimbor of Sauron. This is the most important message ever written in 1,000 years. So of course they send 2 people. The elves have an impromptu ring ceremony while Celebrimbor still chills in Eregion. Galadriel tells Gil-galad that Eregion is in danger and that Sauron doesn't need an army because he can mind control people, and then Gil-galad tells her that Eregion is safe because Sauron doesn't have an army. Gil is an idiot. He also says that the secret of Celebrimbor's craft is safe, which is completely wrong and moronic to say. Sauron already knows the recipe, all he needs is a forge and mithril. Meanwhile, the dwarves are in danger because the mountain is crumbling after the font change. It's been at most 2 days and apparently all the crops have died and the children are starving. Man, running out of food in 2 days is crazy. The merchants have no supplies and no one has boxes of pasta in their homes. So now they're forced to open the royal grain reserves, which puts them on a 3-month timer. We really have to pretend that the dwarves are desperate. They assume that the darkness is spreading and that they are losing the favor of the gods, and instead of trying to find out why, they just decide to turn to elven magic. So let me get this straight. You think the gods are angry with you, so you abandon them in favor of a race you hate. What? Sauron arrives in Eregion, but Celebrimbor won't let him in because he made a promise to Galadriel. Sauron seems to be trying to seduce this elf or get her to pity him, but it goes nowhere. Another failure. Sauron, surrounded by guards, is asked to leave. He refuses and no one cares. Celebrimbor finally talks to him and we get to see Sauron the Manipulator in all his glory. Sauron says he met with Galadriel and that he has news about the rings. Then he gets offended that the king doesn't appreciate Celebrimbor and his work and then dramatically leaves because no one likes him. Yep, I guess it works. It's very lame, but yeah, it works. I know something you don't know, and now I'm leaving. Sad, you'll never know. Hehehe. What a drama queen. He makes false assumptions about the king, and Celebrimbor eats it all up. Throughout the series, elves are shown to have great respect for other people's creations and accomplishments. Elrond praised his work 10 times. Why are you so gullible? And if you're so interested in the rings, why don't you go see them? The capital and Eregion are one chasing away. It's not like you're busy. You can't make Sauron look smart when all his manipulation is based on silly plot points. Celebrimbor should know what happened to the rings and who Halbrand is. Sauron then tells Celebrimbor whatever he wants to hear without knowing if it's true or not. He doesn't know that the rings have been used or whether or not it will cure the elves. He doesn't even know how many rings there are. If I weren't so toxic, I'd say it was a decent exchange. Too bad it's based on a silly premise. Celebrimbor is relieved and excited to have finally created something of value, and Sauron takes the opportunity to go on the offensive. He acts like a pathetic, scared child looking for a friend. The pathetic child act works, but pretending they're friends who worked closely together after only 3 weeks is a bit silly. The writers really scrape the bottom of the barrel to trick Celebrimbor. Sauron immediately asks to make rings for men. Celebrimbor shuts him down, saying that rings are too dangerous for men. Wow, an independent thought. That's crazy. But then he decides to entertain the idea for no reason and says he doesn't have any mythril. Why are you so stupid? You say no and then you say yes when Sauron has not said anything. This conveniently gives Sauron the opportunity to tell him that the dwarves will provide mithril because they are in trouble. How does he know that? Celebrimbor asks what he means, and Sauron evades the question by revealing that he's not called Halbrand, that he's not a king, and that he's not a mortal.
There are forces beyond evil, and sometimes they send a messenger sent to bring guidance to the ears of the wise.
Who are they? Can you choose better words to deceive people? It sounds as if you were sent by someone worse than Satan. Sauron warns that elves, dwarves and men will all perish and they will all need the rings of power to restore balance. Celebrimbor laughs at the idea that he could be a messenger of the Valar, but before he has time to think about it, Sauron turns off all the lights to create a spooky atmosphere and emerges from the fires of hell in a new form. You don't exactly inspire trust, mate. This is an instance where the writers know that we know he's not a good guy, so they push the irony of the situation too far to get us in on the joke. Except all it does is make Celebrimbor look like an idiot. Sauron tells him that he will be known as the Lord of the Rings. I clapped? Sauron keeps milking the same weakness in Celebrimbor because it's all he has and it works. Why would he fall for this when he has already created something incredible? And there you have it. Sauron's master plan is to say random things that Celebrimbor doesn't believe in and then confuse him by coming out of the forge. It's just great. It's like we all know Sauron is going to make the rings, so why bother? Let's just get to it. Nobody wants to see the boring part. Sauron introduces himself as Anatar, and that's it. Now they send a letter to the dwarves to get mithril. Sure, I guess. The dwarves teleport and meet Celebrimbor. He tells them that the rings restored the tree and they can do the same for the mountain. How can you be so sure when you haven't seen the power of the rings? What do you know of the situation of the dwarves? How can you say you're going to make more powerful rings when you haven't even tested the previous ones? Doesn't matter. Sauron tries to manipulate Durin and fails miserably because his lies suck, proving once again that Sauron can only control people dumber than a cow. Sauron informs Celebrimbor of new problems. They must act quickly because Gil-galad has forbidden the forging of new rings, especially if they are intended for other species. Sauron is acting against the will of the king. How many more red flags do you need? Celebrimbor interrupts Sauron and says that he will write a letter to the king informing him that he will not make any more rings. What? You betray your king in 2 seconds without thinking about it or being manipulated into it? Sauron is so shocked by how stupid the script is that he has to argue against his own interest to make sure it's not a prank.
You would lie to your High King.
Amazing. It's season 1 all over again. He does nothing and everything works out for him. The episode ends with the forging of the first dwarven ring. They've had time to send an invitation to the dwarves, receive them, send them home, let them debate this ridiculous proposal and get over their racism, come back with the king, and now they make the ring. How many years will it take Elrond to reach Eregion? And that's it. This is the story of Sauron, the mastermind. Sauron's identity is almost never questioned, and when it is, it's just dropped in the next scene. The events surrounding the making of the rings are rushed, and the entire timeline is compressed into what seems like a month, greatly diminishing Sauron's deception and influence over the world. He was not responsible for the events that led to the forging of the rings, and its contribution is limited to saying the word alloy. The writers are constantly checking boxes instead of letting the characters breathe to tell a deeper, more nuanced story. As a result, the script has to rely on stupid characters and idiotic premises, as well as the "shut up, it's magic" card. The magic system is not explained. Sauron seems omnipotent, with resources and abilities that come out of nowhere. He apparently has an area of effect around him to make everyone dumber, which might explain why the characters are so stupid. Most of the events can be attributed to largely undefined god powers and luck. More often than not, we are expected to write the story for the writers to try to make sense of it. Sauron is so good at fooling people that he doesn't even know what he's doing. He's incredibly passive, and the whole deception arc relies on the meme of not interrupting your enemy when he's about to make a mistake over and over again. It's silly and boring. The whole show is just a lame shame.